Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Angela McCrae, founder of Uncorked and Cultured. Happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday. We made it we're just one day away, 2 days away from April. Could y'all imagine? We're about to go into Q2 of 2021 already. It's just time is just moving so fast right now. But one of the things I'm excited about is this Wonder Women in Wine series that I've been doing each week, where I've been interviewing amazing women creating innovation in the wine industry. Today is, of course, our last installment. And I want you guys to really just sit back and enjoy this conversation with Nichole Johnson. She's joining us from London. So let's bring her in here. Let's see here. Hey, Nichole, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm loving that shirt. You're looking beautiful over there.
I try.
So one of the exciting things, you're joining us here from London. What time is it over there?
It is 5:05 p.m.
5:05 p.m. So you're over here at the end of your day. Hopefully, I see the sunlight still there. I heard it's beautiful. This weather's starting to break over there in London. What's it like living there?
It's a beautiful place to live. It is the perfect combination of culture, food, travel, availability, easy to get around, cheap to get around. You can literally see this half of the world for less than a flight from LA to New York. So I love it.
And how long have you been there?
I've been here for 6 years.
Wow. So you've been there for quite some time. And do you see yourself just staying there?
That's my plan, but obviously, as things get older, your parents get older. I have a new niece, so I come back and forth quite a bit. But this will most likely be one of my forever homes.
Awesome. Well, tell us, a little bit about yourself. I know, you call yourself the International Bootlegger. And for you guys that are just watching, make sure you follow her on Instagram and learn more about the brand. Lapin Rouille, as well as Rusty Rabbit. But before we get into the nitty gritty of all the amazing things she's doing, I want to get a level set of how you went from HBCU graduate of FAMU to the International Bootlegger.
You know what? I really have to give all just due to Florida A&M University, the Florida A&M University, where we have excellence with caring. And that is mostly because I was a part of the SBI program. So that's our School of Business and Industry. And they teach you a caliber of strength, understanding, patience, but mostly go-get-itness. So you really are there with people who are equally justified to be there, smart as whips, and you really have to compete amongst yourselves, but it's just the perfect culmination of Black excellence. And so as I was matriculating through the program, a large portion of my studies was in international business. At the time, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. So I wanted to be an international business attorney. So that was a lot of the focus that I had in classes and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And then I have to really give all credence and credit due to my father, Willard Harris. He started us out traveling when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Wow.
So mixing that international bug and that travel bug together has had me explore the world 10 times over. When I graduated from college, I took a job with McDonald's, and that allowed me to travel internationally. And we were opening up international locations for them. And so as time has taken on and changes have come, it has literally naturally evolved into a global business.
Awesome. And that's an amazing story, right? I mean, it's always about exposure, it's always about creating these experiences and also having that curiosity. And that seems like that's been a perfect mix in your life, starting with your father exposing you to, going to a university like Florida, A&M. And then, of course, just you having that tenacity, and that self-determination to have that international bug and keep it moving. So, yeah. So from McDonald's, how did you get into the spirits and wine industry?
So both of my parents were with Anheuser-Busch. And, when you're a child, you say what you're not going to do. I am not going to work in this industry. I am going to cut my teeth and guide my own path and hear me roar and all that good stuff, right?
Right.
And then you turn around and you're like, hey, Dad, I want you to taste something. And he's like, it better be good. And it was just a natural matriculation. What took place was I helped build brands. So that's either from doing their brand identity or helping them get into retail locations, or just making sure that they had all the regulations and things necessary on their labeling, bottles, packaging, and whatnot, so that they can sell into other countries.
Awesome.
And so I had gotten a call and was asked to come to Scotland and work on a distillery that had just opened, and they wanted to do some innovative things that weren't being done. And it was the first time that I was ever in a corporate, and I don't know if I want to call it corporate because it's a distillery, right?
Right.
But they had mandates, and they were like, let your creative juices flow. And so they really let me just test out different things that I thought would work and apply it to liquor. Mm-hmm. And that went very well. And so then I got a call from another American brand that was, starting up, had one incredible story. And they said, well, you're in London, you think it'll sell over there? And I was like, well, send me a couple bottles, and you have to send a bottle to my dad first, because he's literally my judging factor in everything that happens, right? If he says it's bad, it's bad. And that's because you got 30 plus years worth of knowledge of brewing beer and making sure that the quality was correct and things of that nature. So he knows the entire process when it comes into spirits and hops and your factors in that. So I literally lend on him, as well as he's the reason why I drink. So Scotch he was a Macallan man. He introduced me to it. It was one of my favorites, and then it has just bloomed into one impeccable liquor collection. And then I translated that into business, and that's literally how it has happened.
Wow, that's an awesome story. But you always have to have that, that partner in crime, that person that you kind of, use as your barometer of success, yes. Right? And give you that, I don't want to say validation, but, give you that kind of like pat on the back to let you know, like, this is good stuff. This is the way to go. And so that's good that you and your dad have that relationship.
Yes, because he's had to taste some not so good ones. And he still lets me be his daughter.
That's amazing. But that's part of it, right? He has to go through it. But I'm sure it's been such a journey for both of you guys. And from this, you've built this kind of like global empire where you have you're importing, you're exporting to 152 countries, you're distributing, as a Black woman, because this is, at the end of the day, this is Women's History Month, right? And clearly you're making history. So tell us, what is this like, being in this international space, in the world's oldest industries?
You are correct. World's oldest industry. And that should be noted, because obviously I'm not the first. I won't be the last, but I am the first of this look, this color, this texture, this culture, and I'm one of the youngest. And so coming into this, which started again with food and product, and then has now evolved into spirits, wine, and obviously spirits and wine are two separate categories, cognacs, everything like that, everything that has its own rules, different categories, but mastering those so that our clients are able to move. So we can move products into 152 countries. Obviously, that there's quite a few countries that don't allow alcohol and things like that. So we like to make sure that that's understood. But as far as products are concerned, we're able to move in that. But it was literally learning your shipping lanes, learning who your carriers were, learning even, because sometimes you need product overnight. So that's working with your aviation lines. It has been one of those big processes, and then finding out what the classifications were and the certifications that you needed. So we've gone through all of those different processes in probably 19 different countries. And then we piggyback off of, for instance, the United Kingdom, they have colonizations, they have colonies that they have. So a lot of that we're able to shoe in. We do a lot of piggybacking off of the main caveats of countries, and then being able to move from there.
Wow. So this is a whole nother like way of thinking, right? And this is something that with Uncorked and Culture that I want people to do, especially us as Black women and Black men, is to think global. You know, as Americans, I think we're so caught in trying to fight the system here and try to make waves here. And I feel like, you know, when you start expanding your borders and your opportunity, you realize that this train don't stop in one country.
It does not. It does not stop in one country. And again, just because of my upbringing, in my household, we were taught, obviously, our differences, right? And our culture. I went to an all-Black school called Calvary Baptist Christian School. So I was brought up from a very young age up until college. And then I went to all-Black, university, HBCU. So there was a lot of my cultural foundation in there, but my parents were also smart enough to also make sure that I knew other cultures and I was immersed in other cultures. So like my high school years, I went to a predominantly white school, and our demographic was Asian, white, and everything else, right? So my track team was diverse, my basketball team was diverse, my volleyball team was diverse. And so that allowed me to have those pockets of information, exposure, and experience. And because in my house we were taught there's no need to hate, if you understand what I mean. So obviously people have differences, but you don't have to hate them for their differences. You can acknowledge, support, and learn from their differences. And so that is how I've matriculated most of my life. And so when you go into other countries, the one thing that I always laugh about, especially if like some friends come along or I meet people there, is that we expect for every country to be the American way. Not. And, especially like for me having a champagne brand, obviously that's from France. France has their own way. America is not it, right? So you have to make sure that you allow people to be who they are and meet them where they are. And because that's always been my way, I've always been able to navigate the international waters.
Wow. Well said. Well said. And it's so important, right? You got to meet people where they are in order for you to have that real impact and engagement, right? And actually success. And so I'm glad that was a great segue into your champagne brand that you just recently launched this year. In London, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We launched it in December of last year. And in 2 months, Emma will have to tell me if I'm right or wrong, we sold out. And so then I'm actually very fortunate for how this happened because, again, of our business, Rusty Rabbit International. This was actually created, the underlying of this and the base of this was created for a actual client. And then they weren't able to, for whatever reason, make it happen. But because we had the connections and because we already do distribution and import-export, I called my creative director and I said, hey, and I promise this is exactly how it happened. On Thursday, we caught wind that there might be an issue. I had already talked to one of my really great friends who's one of the most premier retailers here, and I had pitched it, and she was like, if we can have it in for Christmas, let's go. And so then Thursday, we found out that it might happen. So I called my creative director back, and I said, hey, we've already got the product. We have the relationships. It is one of my favorite drinks outside of whiskey and tequila. What do you think? And we literally made it happen in a weekend. So that Friday, we were on the Zoom. Yes, we were on a Zoom. And from Friday night till I think it was like Sunday at 7:00, he finally kicked me off the Zoom and was like, go to bed. And we had a whole brand. And I called her back on Monday and I said, there's been a change of plan. I want to show you something and let me know what you think. And she said, okay. And so I sent it over to them and they were like, yes, absolutely. So that's how we ended up in Harvey Nichols. And then the rest is kind of history as it goes. But it's more so of Lapin Rouille, and it's pronounced Lapin Rouille.
Lapin Rouille.
Yes. And it stands for Rusty Rabbit in French. It is a literal workshop on what we do for our clients. So if you want your own brand, you want your own champagne, you want your own whiskey, Scotch, vodka, whatever it may be, we can literally build you from the ground up. And I'm sorry if that caused a ruckus in your ear.
No, that's perfect. I love it. I love seeing that, because I want people to see how beautiful the bottle is, right? Because it's really beautiful, and it has your logo there, the Rusty Rabbit. And tell us a little bit about, what does Rusty Rabbit mean to you? Where did you come up with that name?
My grandmother, my Nana Hazel Brown, rest in peace. This is dedicated to her, the whole thing, because literally, we make these jokes that we say everything that we prayed for, we finally get. And then when you're standing what you have been like begging, pleading, plotting, dreaming about, and then you finally have it. This was it. I used to go over her house, and even when I was in high school, I would tell about all these exotic places I was going to go, and all these things I was going to do. And she was like, yes, baby, you're going to do it. And so if she loved you and, you meant something to her, she would call you her Rusty Rabbit. Aww. And so that was my pet name from her. And she passed away in 2017. And I said, okay, you know what? And then things had started to really expand. And so changed the name of the company to Rusty Rabbit, and the rest is literally history.
Awesome. And I just want to shout out Sheila, because she mentioned Grandma Love. Grandma Love cannot be replaced.
Grandma Love, Grandma Prayers, Grandma Spankings.
Yes. And Avelina, she just said your big sister's so proud of you.
That's my sister. Hi, Av. I love you.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love it. This is a kind of like a family moment, and it's rooted in the roots that is multi-generational, right? Your grandmother is a dedication to her. Your father, he has, influence in this business, and here you are. So I think legacy is a huge conversation that we should be having in our community.
It's funny because, again, going into other cultures, right? They have a lot that they pass down from generation to generation to generation. And they can back theirs by centuries. And it's the most amazing thing. And because I'm a fan of history, I love to see how it works and how the stories are intertwined. So for me to have the history of my grandmother, who is from Carthage, Texas, was born to my big mama, and my grandma Maddie was a slave, and that whole story, and we know how it happened, and she was sold off because the slave master's wife didn't want her there because she was his child and a Black child, right? So she took them to a foster family. Then that foster family raising her, and then my big mama coming about, and then my grandmother coming about. She being the oldest of 13 children. Them all, they all migrated to California and lived about 2 miles from each other. I literally can get off the 118 freeway and could go from each house within 10 minutes. And then they had big families. And so now you've got this big community that's just your family. And now you're resembling how other cultures have been. And so to be able to pass that back and to glean from that, and for my family, again, to be open with their knowledge and their information. My dad, his father is one of 21. You know what I'm saying? So
wow.
Huge families, and we have our family reunions, and everyone kind of went to different sectors. And so you're able just to get this knowledge base. And then you can use that as your foundation to go into other things.
Wow, that's amazing. That's powerful. And this just gives perspective, right? It just gives a good perspective. And one thing I just want to also touch on is, like, you talk about family, and your extended family, meaning your FAMU family, your supporters, are going to be able to have Lapin Rouille.
Rouille.
Next month, right?
April 21st to be exact.
Say that date one more time.
April 21st of 2021. Lapin Rouille will be available in the United States for sale and distribution.
Wow. And this is going to be a huge moment for you, right? I mean, what can we expect with this release? Because it's so near a special day, right?
It is a special day. It's my birthday. So there's two things happening. Unfortunately, I had surgery at the beginning of this month, so I won't be traveling back to the States. Okay. But I'm working with the vineyard that we have partnered with. And again, just taking COVID COVID destroyed a lot of things, a lot of people, businesses, things like that. But we actually thrived and flourished during this time. And the partnership that we now have with our vineyard, the Boudère family, is amazing. Mm-hmm. Their story is amazing. Their grapes, amazing. I'm a little biased, but it allowed us to really just have these things where if one group was struggling, you were able to balance the scales. And so now you're taking someone who didn't have the capacity or maybe the network to get into other chains, and now we are blowing that out the water. So to be able to do that for that family is an amazing thing just for me, and I love it. And so here we are.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. And I can't wait to, try it. April 20th, right?
21st.
All right, guys, mark your calendar. So where can we find it? I know Cassia had a question. She's congratulating you and wanted to know where there be distribution in North Carolina.
So how it's going to roll out first is you'll be able to buy it online. We work with a fabulous organization called Passion Spirits out of Miami. Mm-hmm. So we have given them exclusive rights for the first 3 months to sell online. But we have already lined up our store distribution, and I'm able to announce that 60 days after our online. So there will be, it will be in California, Florida, Illinois, and Texas first.
Wow. Okay. So those are the 4 cities, right? Or the 4 states, rather. Okay. And well, it's not going to be in New York. So I guess I'll have to just get it online the first 30, 60 days.
Yes. So how New York is going to work. So there's a whole other side of our business, which is Restorative Spirits Lounge. Mm-hmm. Before COVID happened, we had done a deal with British Airlines. And so you will actually, we're trying to figure out how that's going to work now with everything opening back up and things of that nature. But you will be able to see Restorative Spirits lounges inside of British Airways lounges. And so we actually will be in New York in the airport. And once we're in the airport, they will be able to be in the city.
Wow, this is amazing. I mean, it's just so many layers here that all feed into each other. And I'm trying to keep up, right? I'm trying to keep up. But you talk about British Airways, you talk about an exclusive online deal, and you said it's going to roll out in 4 states.
Yes, 4 states. So the British Airways thing, that goes into our other side of the business, which is Restorative Spirits Lounge. Mm-hmm. We represent spirits companies and brands from all over the world. And so what we did is, for instance, we have a great brand called Copper Republic out of South Africa. Well, they do direct flights now from Johannesburg into the United States. So that's how all this is crisscrossing. Then we've got a great brand called Blinking Owl out of California. They have a direct flight with British Airways from California to London. And then we have one out of New Orleans. And so we've got these cities that are direct flights for British Airways. So that's how the lounge theory came about, because we will be showcasing all of these brands outside of Lapin Rouille, inside of the lounges.
Wow. I love the strategy. I love the business acumen. I mean, I'm inspired, and I'm sure a lot of us in the comments are inspired. So if you guys have any questions, please make sure you put them in the comments, and we will get them answered, because I feel like this is also kind of like a lesson, for those of us that are like interested. I mean, because to be honest with you, my goal is to, take Uncorked and Cultured as to be a global platform, to make sure that it, connects the diaspora, provides opportunities for yourself and other, entrepreneurs in the wine, wellness, culture and adventure space, just to make sure that, we're united. Because I feel like, whether it's, I'm sure as you tell me, being in London and an American, how is the diasporic experience there?
Well, I was going to touch base on that when we started talking about that. So you have to think about how many expats, and an expat is basically a United States citizen who's living outside the country, either for work or for schooling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the expat community here in London, it's a lot of us. And you have to think about how that transitions. So the shelf life on an expat is normally like 1 to 2 years, and then they cycle into a new position or school ends or, things like that. And then they go to different countries. So there's actually this organization here, and it's an app. It's called the Expat app. So
I have that.
It's a great app. I love it. I love the young lady who's behind it, all that she is doing. But she's been able to connect everything, and the people. So one of my really good friends from, I would say, elementary school, she texted me one day on Facebook and she says, "Hey, I saw your champagne on this app." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "We're trying to buy it. And how do we get it?" And I was like, "But you're in Georgia." And so it was really just this quick connection outside of London. Because again, I started in Glasgow, Scotland,
mm-hmm.
And then went to Edinburgh and then came down to London. It is a very unique experience. It's experience because we're very strong and we're African American and we're Black, right? But then again, because you're living in the United Kingdom, you have a lot of Africans, and then you have a lot of Asians, you have a lot of Indians, and so and again, our understanding of what those countries are in the States versus what they actually are on maps and geography,
mm-hmm.
History, is very different. And so it allows you to experience that. And it's not in an experience of where you're feeling racism or uncomfortable. Obviously that's there, but that's not the biggest component of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it allows you to have an experience where it's truly comforting and engulfing versus confrontational and, segmented. So it's been an amazing journey. I think you were talking to Ant before, and he was telling you like how I met them. He's based in London. I meet them in South Africa, right? Just how these things come about. Being in, I was in Auckland, New Zealand for quite some time. And so going from country to country, being in Japan, being in Hong Kong, and then coming here, and then it all culminating together, it's just been one truly amazing experience.
Wow, I'm truly inspired. And I love the fact that how you just said, like, no matter where you go in the world, there's community. There's a way to find community, especially amongst the diaspora, because, I think there has been some conditioning on both sides, you know what I mean? Until we actually meet and we come across each other, So I love that you shared that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, and I'll just take the FAMU community, right? Because I'm always going to cherry them on and talk about them. But just in our community, there's no one that we can reach out to in a country that we can't find. So it's one of those things of either you go into maybe the FAMU alum group or whatever it may be, the FAMU sports, FAMU trash talking, whatever it may be. We go in and say, "Hey, I'm in Hong Kong for 2 weeks. Can someone, is anyone in the area?" And you can easily get connected. And then you'll meet someone from Morgan State or from Howard or from Spelman, because obviously HBCUs, we click up. We're really good at that. And then we move about. But every country I've gone to, except for India, I've literally been able to find either a fellow FAMUan or a fellow HBCUan.
Wow. Okay, That's good. That's good to know. I mean, because, we out here. I mean, I think
We are.
with social media, we're starting to see it more, it's more like when you see it, you can achieve it kind of like thing. You know what I mean? And, and so I love the fact that you're like kind of giving us the perspective of how normal it is to kind of just run it. Oh, we have somebody here who wants to discuss the dynamics of importing wines in the U.S. He left his email. That's Michael Gabagas.
Hi, Michael. You can always email hello@rustyrabbitintl.com. We will respond back to you. Importing and exporting of spirits and wine. First of all, let's be clear that they're different. They have different rules. And so I always like to classify that as we're speaking about wine. It has its challenges, but it's not impossible. Most of it has to do with, your COLA registration and your labeling. And that's why I was, telling you before of how we got started with this was making sure that our clients are able to have their labeling correct. Because for instance, the label that's on this bottle is not the same label that's going to the States. And so you have to make sure that all that's done, everything from your UPC numbers and, who it's imported by and what state and having the state on there, just things that you would think are minor and minute are very major, and it could literally stop you from getting your product. And especially if you spent the money on the actual labelings or the bottles. So like, for instance, this is a sleeve. So we print the whole sleeve. Now, if I were to go and put this on 20,000 bottles, and then we're not able to send them into the States because we have something wrong, imagine the cost of that. So these are make or break type of decisions that really have to be honed in on.
Well, I love that perspective, and thanks for sharing it. And I just one thing I want to touch on, because you have a ton of clients that you've worked with throughout your career, right? You mentioned some of your Scotch and whiskey brands, but you've worked with some wine brands, and one of which is one of the most well-known Black woman-owned brands here in the United States, which is the Mcbride Sisters. Can you kind of give us like some context of how you contributed to their success, or what how you worked with them to help, barter their deals or to get them exposure, because they've grown tremendously just over this past year.
Right. So right now, and we could call it what it is amazing to be Black. It is amazing to be a Black woman. It is amazing to be Black owned. It is amazing to be a part of Black culture. So whether it is commercial, whether it is genuine or not genuine, there is, I always look at history, right? So if you take the Prohibition era and you remember how people made their fortunes, had to be in the right place at the right time. And that's how I look at what's happened with COVID. And, unfortunately, with the racial unrest that's happening in the United States, if you're in position, then it could really expand your horizons. So what happened was I was in New York in February. It's crazy. We've been inside for a year. I was in New York in February of 2020. And I went to a Black-owned wine and champagne shop, or spirit shop, and they had the entire Mcbride Sisters collection around the top. And I knew that they had a couple of wines, but I wasn't aware of how extensive it was. And because I was looking for new brands for the British Airways deal, I saw it. And so I reached out to Robin and Andrea, literally Googled them online, called the number that was on there. And Andrea's like, I never answer this line.
Wow.
And she was like, hi, I'm Nichole. I'm from Rusty Rabbit. I have this deal that I'm doing. And again, this is before shutdown happened. I've known about your wine. I've had your wine. I know that it's not here in the UK, but we have an opportunity to be able to let it crisscross paths and bring it into distribution into the UK. So she was like, man, our partner, whatever, has actually been looking into that. Can we pick your brain? And I was like, of course. And so we were just having a conversation, and I was like, well, what challenges are you having in the States? And she was like, we've been, and I'm not going to name the retailer, but we've been trying to get after this retailer for forever. Like, we have sent emails to everyone we can, and they are not budging. And I was like, well, let me give it a shot. And I knew their director of supplier diversity. And I just picked up the phone. I was like, hey, I have this brand. You'd be crazy not to take it on. It looks sexy. It looks premier. It's owned by Black women. She was like, say no more. What is it? I sent her a screenshot. I called Andrea and Robin back and I said, you may or may not be getting a call, but I did what I could. Maybe half a month later, she was like, not only are we in there, but we're in there nationwide and we're doing the pitch and things like that. So that's just kind of the things that we like to do. And again, because we're talking about spirits and wine, that's what we do. But we also like to do that for our other retail clients. But it's all about relationship. Yes. And we spend a lot of time cultivating and maintaining those relationships so that when the time comes, we're in position to just pick up the phone.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I think and I hope it provides context of the scalability that you're able to offer, you know, being a Black American woman in another country, right? Connecting in other countries, like, you know, like just creating that diasporic and global kind of pipeline and the importance of that and how we can literally leverage that to our, you know, to our mental capacity of building our businesses and our brand. Because I feel like, you know, we start off on a local level, you know, which is great. But I think the more that we start thinking global, the more endless opportunities that'll come our way.
Exactly. And it's really, you know, again, and it a lot of our help doesn't always come from us, right? And it can't come from us. And sometimes we have to understand, I don't like the bull in a china shop type of methodology, right? So I attempt to come in and just observe. You know, I like to come into a situation, sit for like a month, see what's happening, see how it, you know, flows, see what the needs are. Because before I was, you know, deemed the International Bootlegger, I just consider myself a solution specialist. So if you had a problem, I would always try to figure out how to solve that problem or, you know, how to enhance what you already had going on. So in order to do that, you literally have to leave your ego and your preconceived notions and those type of things at the door and really just be in the moment and in the space you're in. And when you do that, the opportunities are endless.
Wow. Well said. Well said. And I love that. I love that, being authentic. And okay, so we talked a little bit about how wine is one of the oldest industries in the world, right? And you talked about how it's just such an amazing time to be Black right now with this you know, Black Lives Movement that's happening all around the world. So what do you like? Can you just kind of tap into like the importance of equity in this global wine industry and how we can get there?
Well, less than 1% of the equity of wine is owned by us. Yet, the consumer rate is quite significantly higher. And that translates into a lot of industries, right? But if we're talking about wine in particular, not many of us own our own vineyards. Not many of us own our own corkage. And that's in all facets. And you have to think of, it's not necessarily maybe who can get to market first, but it's all the other things that come with it. Who supplies the bottles? Who supplies the cages? Who supplies the bottlenecks, the sleeves, the printing, all of that, right? Because all of those things culminate into a bottle of wine and champagne. So if you don't have those things and you don't own those things, then you don't really have the equity in that space. And so a lot of times when we want changes or we want inclusion or we want to be acknowledged, when it comes to the bigger picture, for what? And it's not saying that in a negative way, but when we're looked at, and that's just basic math and economics and money management, right? So if whatever you do is not going to translate, like for instance, if every Black person in the world stopped drinking wine and champagne, what would happen?
Those numbers going to affect their bottom line.
Right.
For sure.
Now, if every Black owner and producer of wine stopped making it, what would happen? Nothing. So it's just a, obviously it would have a gap, but it wouldn't stop the industry or the process. So while we are very consumer heavy, it is in our best interest to be very much so equitable owners in that industry.
And to sip consciously. So, that's my whole campaign, is to make sure that we are conscious, be conscious consumers at the end of the day. Like, we talk about buying Black, we talk about supporting Black businesses, and, it has to be something that you do in every part of your life for it to really have a ripple effect and long-term effect for that legacy building. And then it'll also inspire other entrepreneurs and innovators to get into those markets, like you were mentioning, all the different, businesses and facets to go into making one bottle of wine. And, the business opportunities are there.
Yeah. I mean, everything from the barrels, just everything, like, how many Black owned cooperage companies are there? How many steel companies are there? Like, how many of these? So if I say I wanted to do the entire process by a Black owned business, by everything I needed, can I make my wine and champagne?
Yeah.
And until we can answer that question, yes, we have to look at, and that's why it's not a competition to me, right? So, for instance, you were telling me earlier about a young lady who's having trouble getting her help. Like
Maria Inez.
It's always for us is how can we help? How can we get them over that hurdle? Because it's not competition. It's fine to be the first. I love that I'm able to say I am the first, champagne brand in the UK. Fantastic. But now what does that mean? How does that help someone else in the UK do the same thing that I've done, and then move that globally, right? So we can be first, and we can, you know who does it the best and who I actually admire?
Who?
The entire state of Kentucky and bourbon. If you think about the bourbon companies, whether it's Heaven Hill, whether it's, who else is there? 1776, that is made by...
Marie Martin?
No, they're in France. No, but if you just, my whole purpose of this, one of the distilleries had a fire, a huge fire, right? And wiped out two-thirds of their alcohol or something out of their supply. They are one of these communities that come together and they're like, hey, don't worry about it. You can source your liquor from us until it's just one of those things that they've all been there. They all understand it. Of course, it's competition. It's great to have your label on, but it's a community. And so sometimes I look at that as, I love our people, I love our culture, but sometimes we are not community. And sometimes we have to take ourselves outside of that and say, okay, how do we build our community and how do we expand it? Because it's fine to be the first, it's fine to be the only, but it gets lonely, So it's one of those things that I want to share my experiences with another Black owned company, or, there's a great Avia. They have their own category in the tequila space, but it's called Rebel Spirits. I had a call with them last week and I was like, hey, we're coming to the States. They were like, hey, great. Call this number, this number, this number, this number. Your distribution for the West Coast is done. I was like, awesome. No problem. And awesome. When you come out this way, you already know. But, Micah McFarland and Chris Abbott, amazing Black guys who are completely shaking up the industry and what they're doing. But it is literally that give and take. We have a Thursday call called Black in Spirits, and it's a few of us that gather on the call, and it's literally, hey, what problem are you guys having? And then we just give the resource of, oh, we'll call so and so, or do this, or oh, we just went through that. here's how we can help, or don't do this because it's going to cost you a fortune and it's not going to work. Just things of that nature, but it's community. And a lot of the things that we need is community.
Wow. I'm glad you tapped on that, because it is, sometimes you feel like it can be that tension, that unnecessary tension there where you try to build something from scratch, right? Because I feel like sometimes it is a level of like a race for some people, not all. But I think you hit it right on the nose, where it's like community should be the first and foremost, lifting each other up, being there for each other. And I just want to show my appreciation for you for supporting us for the International Winemakers Summit and being one of our community partners. Like, I felt like that was amazing. And it was a great way for us to, connect and start, creating these pipelines of community with each other.
Absolutely. And to me, that was a no starter. Like you said, I heard 3 things. I travel, I do video content, and I drink wine. Sounds good to me. So what do you need? What do you need? How can we help? It was just, I don't need a story. I don't really need like this complicated, convoluted. Listen, anyone that has the guts to step into this industry and plant their flag and attempt to run this race, how can I help? How can we help? Because we're all going to go through the same thing. We've all made mistakes. Absolutely made mistakes. I accidentally sent the wrong size bottles to the wrong country. Jesus, this was a whole thing. Because obviously in different countries, when it comes to spirits, you can only have 750s or 700s. So I'm looking at the paperwork. It was through my time when I was flying every 3 and 4 days. And I'm on my flight. I'm reading the manifest. I'm like, yep, that's right. Sign off on it. They send the whole container down there. I get a call 4 days later. Not only are they not going to deliver it, but they're going to seize it because they're not going to send it back. Who's responsible for that, right? So now you've got to start calling your friends in high places. And there's this wonderful organization in the States called DISCUS. It's the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States. And it was literally a phone call, and they're amazing. I said, hey, I made a mistake. I'm not trying to get it in. I just want them to return it. Can someone help me? And they did. So it's like one of those things of there's government organizations that you can join. I would tell anyone that is in the spirits industry or in the wine industry to definitely become members. Shameless plug, but become members of these type of organizations because they really have your best interest at heart. The tariffs that we've been going through back and forth, they've been lobbying and advocating and really fighting for making sure that, just to give you a cost analysis, a bottle of whiskey, of American whiskey in the UK, it's an automatic 28 pound and 76 pence duty per 100% liter of alcohol placed on top of the bottle. That's not even the cost of the bottle. So just coming into the country, you already have to pay a baseline of whatever that percentage is, right? Then you have to pay the VAT, which is 20%, which is the tax, is 20% of the price of the bottle. So now you've got these two numbers that already can literally, depending on the percentage of your alcohol volume, can price you out the market. You've got to figure out how much business you could actually do there. Does it compensate for you lowering your prices? What's your cost of goods? Are you cutting into? So there's all of these factors, right? And so you get there and you literally can call these organizations and say, hey, I have a thought process. I want to go into the UK. Is it viable? They'll put you a part of their global program. They'll allow you to do like their trade shows with them. There's also one for wine and champagne. So it allows you to make the necessary mistakes without making the costly mistakes. So it's just different things like these that we wouldn't know, or someone who is sitting in there like during COVID times, like, oh, I want to start a wine brand. Okay. There's just things that you didn't know. And instead of having to pay all this money or have these costly mistakes, there's this wealth of information that's available to you.
Wow. Thank you for that. And for all of those that are aspiring distillers or, spirits or wine brands, you got about 5 minutes to put your questions in the comments to get them answered while we have Nichole with us as part of our Wonder Woman in Wine series. So let us know, because she's dropping some gems. She's giving you the roadmap, right? At least a little bit, at least a section, a smidgen of it. Just a little bit. But, if you have any specific questions, please make sure you put them in the comments. Otherwise, I believe her email is also in the comments as well. Not her personal email, her, general email. So we don't want anybody blowing her up. But definitely, let us know if you have any final questions before we end. And just, Nichole, I just want to say that, throughout this series, like, I was very intentional to select different women to, interview, because I felt like, I wanted to ensure that we had different perspectives, experiences, and niche, in this space, in the wine space. And I believe that, you having the both sides of it with the, with the spirits and the wine, and then the global element and being an American, I think is just so unique. And I just want to thank you for, sharing space with me today.
Thank you for inviting. You literally started out, you were like in February. So I need you to do, okay. And I told the team, put it on my calendar. So you were like my first booking for March, and it's been my absolute pleasure. Again, I don't think that knowledge should be hoarded. Outside of trade secrets, which is the same business. It's one of the oldest.
Yes. It is. And I'm going to just put this up one more time so we can let people know. April 21st.
Yes. Yeah. So that was our Valentine's Day offering. So the candles were handmade. There's a candle at the top of there, and then the wine. So we'll be having some specialty boxes. There'll be some medallions coming. There's some custom masks coming. So it's going to be a very inclusive experience. We're very excited for the different things. There's also 5 other offerings coming down the line. So we will be expanding our champagne line. So it won't just be, but there will be 5 over the next 8 years.
Awesome. Wow. I love it. This is how you plan. So you come up with the idea. This is a brainstorm session over a Zoom call that happened over a weekend. And now she has a whole 8-year plan mapped out. That's how you do it. That's what you take. And that's the difference between just having an idea, and actually taking the initiative and taking the steps and taking that action, which is so necessary. And so I'm just going to put this here too. So guys, make sure you follow her on Instagram. This is the actual Champagne's handle here. So you can learn more and get updates on the drop happening in the US online for the first 60 days starting April 21st. And then it's going to be released in California, Illinois, Texas,
and Florida.
There it is. So before we go, do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to leave us with?
Drink responsibly, sip consciously, really just enjoy. Spirits are meant to be enjoyed. It creates fellowship. It creates special memories. You just attach all of these things to, spirits and wine and champagne. And, explore it. Like, if I was still drinking what I drank in college.
Okay.
I think Arbor Mist was our theme.
Yes.
I am way past Arbor Mist, and I'm not knocking it. It was a wonderful foundation to get us started. But enjoy it. Like, seriously, go out. There's millions, honestly, of different brands. And you can really take your time, learn about it. There's the WSET certification, which is in the wine, which is the wine certification, and learn about what you love. And I'm one of the type of people, I like to learn. I like to get more information. Obviously, it's conducive for my job, but learn about it, experience it. Go to different vineyards, go to different wine tastings, see if you like white, if you like the rosé, do you like sweet, do you like dry? I particularly don't like sweet. My palate and our brand, it showcases that, but you can have them in different experiences. If you want to drink Moscato all day long, that's cool, but also look at what's the difference between a Chardonnay? What's the difference between, like, our grapes is Pinot Meunier. Sorry, talking too fast. Just exploring what the different grapes are, what the tastes are, what the texture is, just different things of that nature. But whatever you do, enjoy it.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Because at the end of the day, it is a journey.
It is.
It is. Well, thank you so much, Nichole, for joining us. And, just if you guys want to learn more about what Nichole's doing, once again, check it out. Go to the website, follow the brand on Instagram. Also, guess what? You can find her brand on the Uncorked and Cultured Sip Consciously directory on our website. So, that's a directory that we put together to allow people to have a one-stop shop to find Black winemakers, Black wine brands, Black wine retailers, as well as Black wine importers and distributors. So definitely make sure you check us out. Nichole, I'll talk to you soon. And I wish you the best in all of your endeavors.
Thank you.
And I'll be in touch. How about that?
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, guys, just before we wrap out, I just want to kind of leave you guys with a couple things, because, I'm trying to create a space here, right? Trying to create a space so we could spread love and share and sip consciously and just know who our tribe is and get there. And so, make sure that if you like what you see, and if you like today's interview, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Please share this interview. It's going to be on our Facebook page, so you can just share it with your friends and family, to any Facebook groups you're a part of. We actually have a Facebook group, so you could join us and help us build our community there and contribute to the community. Of course, repost and share using our hashtag Uncorked and Cultured, and also subconsciously. That's one of our other hashtags that we've been using as part of our Subconsciously series. And you can also follow me. You can get in touch with me at Adventurous Ange on Instagram, as well as Uncorked and Cultured, where we're also do IGTV interviews as well. So we definitely hope to see you there. And once again, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate you. And I'll see you next time. Enjoy your week.